OneVoice Italia.
Philadelphia.
Class is now in session. Christopher Columbus University is on air from Philadelphia and broadcasting worldwide from within the shadow of Marconi Plaza. Radio Voice Italia is proud to present a recurring segment with civil rights author, professional researcher, and renowned Christopher Columbus expert, Robert Felix Petrone, Esquire.
Buongiorno tutti and welcome to Radio Voice Italia's Christopher Columbus University, where we teach you the truth about the greatest hero of the 15th and 16th centuries, Christopher Columbus, and update you on the international efforts to preserve Christopher Columbus's legacy. I'm your host, il professore Robert Petrone. Today on our Christopher Columbus University segment, we have a major news update. Regular listeners have heard me report for the past several weeks about the Randolph, New Jersey School Board controversy, which began when the Randolph School Board, without informing or obtaining the input of the Italian-American community, unilaterally renamed Christopher Columbus Day to the misnomer Indigenous Peoples Day. No human beings are indigenous to the Americas. The tribal peoples were, in fact, the first colonists. When the Italian-American community and other patriotic residents complained, the Randolph School Board, in a masterstroke of petulance and childishness, declared that no school holiday would have a name and replaced all holidays on the school calendar with just day off. No President's Day, no Martin Luther King's birthday, no Independence Day, no Memorial Day, no Veterans Day, just one big, gray, nameless, distinctionless, mealy-mouthed, amorphous, un-American mashup called Day Off. The Italian-American OneVoice Coalition got involved after the IAOVC put pressure on the Randolph School Board. The school board agreed to hold a meeting to reconsider not only their decision to eliminate the names of all school holidays, but their initial decision to remove Christopher Columbus's name from that holiday. Here to tell us about the dramatic outcome of that epic battle between the Italian-American OneVoice Coalition against the forces of evil and Marxist critical race theory is a true hero, not only of the fight to preserve the correct history of Christopher Columbus, not only of the fight for civil rights of Italian Americans across the nation, but a hero of truth and of Western culture itself, Italian-American OneVoice Coalition Executive Board member, Andre DiMino. Andre, hello, and welcome to Radio Voice Italia's Christopher Columbus University.
Well, Robert, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. It was great. And listening to that story about Randolph, I'm just amazed, even though I was part of it every step of the way.
Yeah, it is amazing. And before I ask about the events of that amazing school board hearing and you tell us about the outcome, would you be so kind as to tell our listeners a little bit about what the Italian-American OneVoice Coalition is?
Well, absolutely. Italian-American OneVoice Coalition was actually founded just about 30 years ago. Next year will be our 30th year. It was founded by Dr. Manny Alfano, specifically to push back and defend Italian-American heritage and culture against the stereotyping and negative portrayals that we're seeing throughout media. And of course, now more recently regarding the attacks on Columbus. It's something that we are dedicated to. We are a 501c3 nonprofit IRS registered foundation, and we educate on why attacking Columbus and attacking Italian American civil rights is not appropriate. We're a nationwide organization of activists and a network of people that work in all locations, whatever municipalities, school boards, whatever, call upon us, and we get involved with our local people, as well as our specialists, professionals, lawyers from the Italian-American OneVoice Coalition to pursue our goal of preserving, defending, and celebrating our Italian-American heritage and culture.
Spectacular. Now, our listeners have been waiting with bated breath to hear about the outcome of this Randolph, New Jersey School Board attack on not only Italian Americans, but on America itself. Please tell us all the dirty details of what happened last week at that reconsideration hearing and its outcome. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you. Well, you did summarize it well. As you know, they first started with the vote against Columbus Day, changing it to Indigenous Peoples Day. And what was amazing, Robert, is they did this without it being on the agenda, and without really any discussion. In less than 2 minutes, a unanimous vote to change Columbus Day, a federal holiday, and a day so important to Italian Americans. Well, this met with total outrage from the local residents who actually called us in to help them, support them in pushing back against this. Then on June 10th, it was put on the regular school board's meeting agenda, and over 150 people showed up. We were there with people from the Italian American OneVoice Coalition, but also I want to compliment all of the local residents, Italian Americans, and actually non-Italian Americans that were there to tell the school board they did the wrong thing from removing that great holiday from their school calendar. Well, unbelievably, at the conclusion of over an hour and a half of testimony from over 27 residents that spoke, as well as myself and Frank Lorenzo from the Italian American OneVoice Coalition, the school board then said, well, instead of putting Columbus Day back, let's just remove all holidays. That's Martin Luther King Day, all the Jewish holidays, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving. I mean, they became equal opportunity insulters. It was just disgraceful. Everyone at the meeting was just totally shocked. They wouldn't hear anything else from the public, and they closed that meeting. The next Sunday, we held an Italian American civil rights rally right in Randolph, New Jersey, and we had the press there from all the major networks and radio stations, and we gave the school board 30 days to reverse their ludicrous decision to eliminate all holidays, and especially to reinstate Columbus Day. And within 48 hours, the school board announced an emergency special meeting that took place just this past Monday. Now, Robert, I want to tell you, this was an unbelievable meeting. There were over 400 people that showed up to this meeting. And the meeting was only supposed to be, there's only one thing on the agenda, and that was the reconsideration of this vote. But it actually went on for 4 hours with over 50 people speaking against the school board and telling them what a dumb move it was. And there were people there, not just Italian Americans, but there were veterans there, there were Jewish people there were people from all walks of life speaking out to say that this was not good. This was a part of cancel culture, and it all started with their vote on Columbus. And fortunately, at the end of that meeting, we could declare a victory because they voted 8-1 to put all the holidays plus Columbus Day back on the school calendar. It was a big win.
8-1, 8-1. So that's incredible to me because they, as you said, they did it in 2 minutes. Wasn't even on the agenda. And yet when they were confronted with this effrontery, they voted 8-1 to rescind it. That blows my mind. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it was just amazing. Unfortunately, the one person that voted against it, she was the one that originally made the motion to eliminate Columbus Day. She was part of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And instead of including everyone, they now excluded everyone. So she wouldn't give in. She held on by voting against it. But fortunately, the other 8 members did vote to rescind both of those votes. First, the vote to eliminate all holidays, and of course, the original vote to eliminate Columbus Day. So we're glad that we prevailed on that, but we're going to keep watching them. And also, Robert, I want to tell you, this is a warning now. This is a warning to all school boards, all municipalities, that they can't buy into this cancel culture, which starts with the elimination of Columbus Day, because we're called in and we will work with local residents, as we did with Randolph, and bring our expertise and all of our activists from across the country to push back on this revisionism that's occurring throughout our country.
That's right. Yeah, we have an army behind us now. The IAOVC is also a member of the Conference of Presidents, isn't that so? Yes, and so are many other Italian-American organizations. And there are a lot of these diversity and inclusion committees going around, and I like to call that opposite speak. Orwell called it double speak in his book 1984, but I call it opposite speak. You know, I said in a previous episode there are 2 types of lies. There are the types of lies where you just say something that isn't true, and then there's a type of lie where you actually say the opposite of what is true, and that's what they're doing to Columbus, and that's what they're doing in naming their organizations diversity and inclusion. So, and also this victory at the Randolph School Board, this happened without any arrests like the school board meeting in Loudoun County, Virginia, correct?
Oh, that's correct. Although it was a boisterous meeting, everybody was respectful and spoke out. And yes, there were boos and jeers when the school board made some dumb comments, you know, of course, where they keep on repeating the lies and the fabricated atrocities about Columbus. Yeah, there were boos and there were jeers. But I would tell you what, we said the Pledge of Allegiance loud and clear. And when they voted to reinstate the holidays, we all cheered, but it wasn't violent. It was respectful, and I tip my hat to all of the great local residents and the residents from around the area that traveled in to make sure that this ridiculousness got eliminated.
That's so wonderful. Just spectacular. It's an incredible story, and it's a true testament to not only the fighting spirit of Italian Americans, but of all patriotic Americans, and of the human spirit itself. Let me ask you a broader question, if I may. And this question has been posed to me. Why put so much on the line, put so much effort, put so much risk into any of this just for some statues and holidays? What is so important about Christopher Columbus and his true legacy?
Well, I always divide it into two things. Number one, what it means to Italian Americans, and number two, what it means to America. So let's start with what it means to Italian Americans. You know, in the Great Migration from 1890s to 1920, there was millions of Italians that came to this country, and they thought they were coming to streets paved with gold. But when they got here, they found out that they were under high discrimination, denigration, and as we know, even the lynchings that occurred, the largest one, of course, in New Orleans with 11 Italians that were lynched, innocent Italians that were lynched. But then it was in 1892 when President Franklin, in order to apologize and atone for the treatment that Italian Americans did, he said, well, let's celebrate Columbus Day as a patriotic day to recognize Italian Americans. So it goes all the way back to 1892, what an important and iconic symbol is to Christopher Columbus is to our ancestors and all the generations since, as our acceptance and adaptation and the apology that we suffered throughout. So that's the first part about why Columbus, and I know you at Columbus University, you know well about that, and that's why it's so important for us to fight for Christopher Columbus as that symbol. But now, let's switch it a little bit, and let's switch it to what we're looking at now with cancel culture and all this wokeness and everything else. Remember, it was Howard Zinn in his book in 1980 when he was an avowed Marxist and a self-described anarchist that wanted to tear down this country. And how did he start? How did he go after the USA? He started with Columbus. He started by detracting from the very foundings and connections of Western culture to this part of the world. He wanted to destroy the reputation of Western culture by first destroying the person that joined the continents, that changed the world, that brought Western culture to this part of the world. And that's why he used some of the primary sources, but he obfuscated and changed the words in it to make Columbus look like he was a genocidal maniac, a rapist, the person who invented slavery. And it's all just not true. So what I tell these school boards and all these towns is that they are just tools. They are just tools of Howard Zinn in his desire to attack this country. And unfortunately, we've had generations now that have been brainwashed and indoctrinated by the Zinn philosophy, a Marxist and an anarchist that's going after this country. So let's put it to the bottom line. Christopher Columbus is an iconic symbol to Italian Americans, but it's also an important symbol about America, the USA, and the underpinnings of our great society.
That's right. Yeah, and not only is the stuff that Zinn says in his book not true, it's that deeper type of lie that I mentioned earlier. It's the actual opposite of what is true. And he really is clever because he used very careful use of ellipsis dots and out of context statements to actually make Columbus's own words sound like they're saying the exact opposite of what he means. And you were talking about the lynchings and how they led to President Harrison declaring the holiday. You said President Franklin, but I know why you did that, because Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was also one of the most liberal presidents we've ever had, also nationally recognized Christopher Columbus, independent of Harrison's declaration of the holiday. But you mentioned the lynching being the largest. It was actually the largest in the United States, not just only and I'm making that clear to my listeners. I know you know that, Andre. Wasn't just the largest lynching of Italian Americans, that lynching that happened in New Orleans. It was the largest mass lynching that ever happened in the United States. It wasn't against Black people. It wasn't against Latino people. It was against Italian Americans. Now, this damnatio memoriae of Christopher Columbus, the campaign of erasure of Columbus, is happening in so many places around the country, despite the fact that folks like you and I know that it's just the opposite of what is true. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they've really got to stop it, because they're just going with the false popular narrative. If they look deeply into it and they look at all the books like Mary Grabar's Debunking Howard Zinn, or all the, for example, a great thing is we actually have an indigenous person, someone that can trace his roots back to the Taino tribe, Rafael Ortiz, who wrote 3 books disputing all this stuff about Columbus. So, if they really look at the primary sources, the reputable facts and so forth, they'll see that they're just part of this brainwashing and indoctrination that occurred, and they should really stop it because, just like it's been said in the past, they start with Columbus, but then it's going to go on to every other symbol in this country. Washington, Jefferson, every person that's been before. You got to remember, and I know that you know this well, Columbus was a man of his times, and when he got to this part of the world, this was no Garden of Eden. There was cannibalism, there was slavery, there was genocide. It's just, you can't hold them to our standards today. They can't hold Columbus. He was a man of his times, but also all this stuff that fabricated about that couldn't be further from the truth. He protected the Taino tribe from the Caribs, who were the cannibals going after them. And there's lots of other cases like that. Plus, he's, someone that wanted to bring Christianity around the world. So we should really look to Columbus as the foundation of Western culture in this part of the world.
Yes, you mentioned Rafael Ortiz. He was a guest on episode 5 of our show, and as far as I know, he's a listener. So I really appreciate Rafael's input in a lot of the things that I do and write and say. This may be one minor point where you and I disagree. You say that Columbus was a man of his time. I like to say he was a man ahead of his time, because this was the guy who was a capitalist in the age of empires. He was a civil rights activist in the age of oppression. Just everything about him superseded the norms of the time in a positive way. And so I always like to say that when someone says, almost apologetically, well, you have to look at these historical figures in the context of the era in which they live. And I say, well, yeah, but if you do that with Columbus, you see that he was actually really much better than the times dictated. So this brings me to what we've talked about so far, brings me to a question. Who do you think, and this is a question I asked Rafael Ortiz, and it's a question that I devoted the entirety of episode 9 to. Who do you think are these Columbus detractors, or as you have called them in interviews, revisionists?
Well, I think they're people that are just against our country. They want to take whatever means possible to detract from our heritage, from our background. So I could say some of them may be against Italian Americans, but I think it goes much deeper than that, and it's really just an attack on our way of life. And as far as I'm concerned, when you talk about these revisionists, it's because they want to see the world in their view and not the world that has been created and it's been so great, the greatest society that's ever occurred, and yet they want to detract from it. So, we can't buy into it, and we can't let the young people to continue on with this brainwashing and indoctrination. That's why we're looking to bring Italian American heritage into the classroom through educational purposes and pushing for that to be taught properly in the schools.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's another thing where you agree and Rafael agrees and I agree. I asked Rafael the same question, and he said he believes it's un-American or anti-American radical groups. And I agree with him in large part. So I have watched you give this interview about the Randolph, New Jersey fiasco on other shows. And I'm thinking in particular of the New Jersey morning show where you were interviewed, and the interviewer, after you got off of the air, the interviewer's co-host got on the air, and I don't really think she meant anything bad by this, but you can never tell when it comes to the mainstream media. She said, once you left the air and weren't able to respond, well, look, if you don't really like Christopher Columbus, you take your pick. We have so many other Italian heroes to celebrate. Blah, blah, blah. And that really got my dander up. And I would love to hear you, rather than my listeners hearing me again, I would love to hear you tell my listeners why we shouldn't and won't capitulate in that way. Go ahead.
Well, that's great. And in fact, unfortunately, she was actually a young Italian-American woman that did that. So it was a double insult as far as I'm concerned. And, I do hear that all the time. And we hear that from Italian-Americans themselves. And that's right. You use the right word. It's capitulate. It's give in. It's surrender. And we shouldn't do that. No other ethnicity, no other race is told who they should honor. And as far as I'm concerned, Christopher Columbus, it was like going to the moon and back at the time. It was an incredible journey. It was an incredible feat. He was the person that literally changed the world. I don't think you can find any other person in history that really, not literally, changed the world. And as Italian Americans, we have him as our important symbol, as an iconic symbol, and we don't have to give in. It's not something that we should do. Now, are there lots of Italian Americans or Italians that could be honored? Of course. We've contributed to every part of society, in every part of the world. You can find us in all aspects, but that does not mean that we have to be forced to take on someone else because of the fake, phony attacks on Christopher Columbus that were put out there by anarchists and Marxists. Let's not give in. Don't give in. Everybody keep fighting. Hey, listen, Robert, we won this battle. We have to win the war. This is a war, and we have to win it. And we're ready to use every means at our disposal at the Italian American One Voice Coalition to help any group, any town, any school board that needs our help. Just let us know. We're going across the country with our activists, and we're there to support the local people in fighting back on this ridiculous approach.
God bless you. Well, I don't presume to speak for my listeners, but I can say that I, for one, am profoundly grateful that the Italian American One Voice Coalition and its ilk are out there on the front lines of this war, fighting for our freedom and to preserve our history and our heritage, not just that of Italian Americans, but of all of America and all of Western culture. You, sir, are a real hero. Grazie mille per essere venuto.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate being on, and I appreciate the work you do on this great show. Keep it up, and we want to get this word out to everyone, and you're helping us do that.
Your lips to God's ears. And that's today's class. For more news, articles, and resources about Christopher Columbus as the first civil rights activist of the Americas, icon of Western culture, paragon of Catholic virtue, and greatest hero of the 15th and 16th centuries, visit preservecolumbus.us. That's Preserve Columbus, rendered as one word, .us, and post a little note of appreciation for our webmaster, Tom LaCosta. And Andre, is there a website the listeners can visit to learn about, join, or support the Italian American One Voice Coalition?
Yes, please go to our website. It is our initials, iaovc.org. Stands for Italian American One Voice Coalition, iaovc.org.
I'm il professore Robert Petrone. A presto!
The Jersey Shore has fun and sun, sand and sea, and Radio Voice Italian.
This is Radio Voice Italia, USA.